tell your friends about the program, and share the love. Nikki Chambliss rode her motorcycle over here.
That I did, absolutely. Been doing a good bit of riding this week.
Like a badass she is. I love it. I see the helmet over there right next to the green room. Woody Fincham brought some brown juice to the show, a little Buffalo Trace. We're very grateful for that. Thank you, Woody.
Oh, you're welcome.
And Keith Smith is looking quite dapper in his new red shoes, Woody.
Yes.
New red shoes.
They're definitely standing out.
We made sure to notice that as soon as he walked into the studio today. A lot to cover on the program today on a Monday. Judah Wickhauer is our director. Judah, we can rock and roll. Guys, they're coming in fast and furious, these questions. Awesome. Judah, we can rock when you're ready. Good Monday morning, guys. My name is Jerry Miller, and welcome to Real Talk with Keith Smith. Thank you kindly for joining us. A pleasure to connect with you guys through the I Love CVille network, thanks to Keller Williams Alliance, folks. This show, dynamic. You, the viewer and listener, can interact with the program as you see fit. Offer questions, perspective, and comments to the panel of experts, folks. The show is live streamed on every social media platform known to mankind. It originates in downtown Charlottesville, but our audience, Albemarle County, Central Virginia, Commonwealth, country, and worldwide. Judah Wickhauer is our director. Judah, if you can go to the studio camera, my friend, and let's welcome our panel of experts, Woody Fincham, Nikki Chambliss, and Keith, distinguished gentleman Smith. Guys, how are you this Monday morning?
Good morning. Great over here. I think we're all doing pretty good, yeah?
And we're going to be so much better for what Woody brought to the office later on today. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good Monday, that's for sure.
Woody Fincham, your second rodeo on the set. Please introduce yourself to everybody that's watching.
Woody Fincham. I run and own Fincham & Associates. We're a real estate valuation firm. We specialize in hard to appraise residential property, some commercial now as well. And, we do everything from very large estates down to your normal everyday residential. So happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Nikki Chambliss, we know you. How was the weekend, my friend?
Oh, it was great. Was able to meet up with some Atlantic Bay Mortgage peeps at their tailgating, and then moved on to another tailgating event, and then was able to go watch the game. It was a beautiful day for it.
You caught a hell of a ball game, huh?
I mean,
what a nail biter.
We should have had that one easy.
Atlantic Bay is not happy because they're headquartered in Tidewater. So
Old Dominion.
Yeah, Old Dominion. That was a hard loss for them.
The Monarchs, nothing to sneeze about. They beat Virginia Tech. You can make a legitimate argument the best football team in the Commonwealth may be the Monarchs from ODU. UVA certainly got a squeak by victory there with seconds to spare. Keith Smith, how was your weekend?
Good. We were out in Roanoke for a conference and came back, had a little bit of doctor's appointments to do and some meetings, and so we are in the saddle, ready to go.
The questions are coming in fast and furious. We see where rates are going. Woody, why don't we start with this? Rates are rising quickly. Grayson starts us off with what happens if we eclipse 7% in 2022. What's the impact on the market?
Obviously, it's going to reduce the amount of buyers out there. It will push people out. I mean, the pricing, the actual price and value of property right now is so high, a lot of folks can't get in. And every time the rates go up, you're going to eliminate some buyers out. But 7% historically not that high of a rate. It's just when you look at it presently, it's what's relevant to what you're used to. And right now, if I was looking to buy a house, I would have no issue with it. I just wouldn't be able to buy as much house as I could have bought 6 months ago.
Nikki Chambliss.
No, I agree, big time. And I think that this is where I think we talked about it here recently, and then it also came up in conversation at one of the car events. The idea of, maybe that is not as much house as you can afford, maybe moving from looking at an attached or to a detached to an attached, right? Going from looking at so many square feet to, oh, you know what? We're through COVID life a little more. Mm-hmm. We're not needing to stay home quite as much. Maybe I'm okay with a little smaller space, right? or maybe I want to make up for it in outdoor space, whatever that looks like. But finding places to kind of reevaluate and adjust what a person is looking for.
Keith Smith.
So it's amazing how smart and intelligent our listeners and viewers are and how the chemistry is starting to work. I actually printed out this morning the 30-year fixed rate mortgage since 1971, since Freddie Mac. And the last time the rates were at 7% was 2001. There was a couple around 2002, a couple of months. This breaks it down January from February. So while you were speaking, I just did a quick run on the car footprint, what sold in 2001, single-family detached, no new construction. So the median sales price in 2001 was 178. Just to throw a number out
So
there.
2001, the last time our country has seen 7% with good credit on a 30-year fixed.
30-year fix, Freddie Mac, 2001.
Grayson's follow-up question. They're talking it could eclipse 8.
Well, let's find out when the last time it was 8.
Yeah.
And on that end of it, was 2000. So 2001, the average was 6.97. I'm calling that 7%. And in 2000 was 805. So it went a little over. So it was a full point difference between 2000 and 2001. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, didn't we not have, Woody, a little mini recession at that point?
I think we did, if I remember correctly.
So, Woody Fincher, what do you make of this? We're trying to bring some calm through the storm here. We have to emphasize that a 6, 7%, even an 8% rate, in the grand scheme of things, is still affordable.
Right. So I think the group of consumers that are going to set the market for the next couple of years is really going to come down to those of us that have a lot of equity in our property, and then we have to move. Life happens. You have another child, you have a job move, something like that. So you need to move. An in-law comes in to live with you. You need more bedrooms. So you have to move. People are still going to continue to do it, but those of us that have a lot of equity in our property, if we need to take a little bit of a lighter approach because we want to ship a property or sell a property faster, we're capable of doing that. That's really the catbird seat, as my father would say. But I don't see any issues with it anytime soon because, look at the inventory numbers. We're still rising in value, and we're in the third quarter now, and I don't think it's going to trim off much.
So
if at
I
all.
spent a little time last night and this morning crunching numbers in all our jurisdictions and went from 2022 actually back to 08 because that's when the last time we were at 6%. And, Grayson is probably not wrong. I think we're going to see 7 to 8% before the end of the year. We shall see, but that's.
I think we're definitely going to see that.
Yeah.
We got a rate hike coming from the Fed, and
Yeah.
I know there's not a direct correlation in T-minus 24 hours.
Yeah.
Another one in October and another one in November.
Yeah, we'll be at 7 and 8%, I think, by the end of the year. But sticking with the 6% we've got right now, we live in Fluvanna County, so I just turned the tab to Fluvanna County just to see what was happening on the county. This is single-family detached year to date, so that's from January 1 to actually last night. In 22, there was 310 units sold, 6 days on market. That's median. Median sales price was $330. Compare that to 21, there was 384 sold, same amount of days on market, which means the market's moving pretty rapidly. 285. So make a long story short, we're about 20% under year over year in volume, but we're up 16% in sales. What do you think?
I think the people that have moved or wanted to move.
Sales volume, the actual dollar amount. I apologize. I
Right.
missed
So
that.
the people that have moved, I think, have done it. I think we're transitioning back more. Every time I come on, we talk about moving back to the normal. Nobody knows what the real normal is anymore because that bar has moved. But I think we're going to continue to see that transition that you're talking about.
So Nikki, if
Yeah.
same county, 2020, 19 and 18, we've had between 332, 333, 342 number of units sold. Pretty close,
Okay,
right?
yeah,
Pretty
yeah.
close. 30, roughly 32, 31, 33 days on market, but the price went from 216 in 18 up to 243 in 2020. So to Woody's point, there's a bunch of equity going in there.
Well, and do we know how many, and maybe this is I know you've got a lot of data there, do we happen to know how much of that is Lake Monticello?
I actually wrote Lake Monticello out separately.
Nice.
So 2022, we had 118 units sold, 21, 243, so that's a 22%, so the lake's a little bit higher percentage underperforming 2022, but we're up 15%. We're up from 21 of 275 to 317 this year. So the question is that going to hold, guys? What do you think?
I think with the Fluvanna County specifically, a lot of that depends on what they're going to allow to be built.
Yeah, so,
Good point.
What do you think about that, Woody?
Every time I drive by that mixed-use development, every morning when I'm leaving Lake Monticello, I think about it a lot. We need more folks coming in. I mean, the service industries are hurting badly. I mean, around the lake, they're not. We love to frequent all the establishments there, but there's nobody locally to do it, and they're pricing them out of the market because people that work in service jobs, they need affordable housing, and it's just not there. It's still growing. The price is.
So I don't want to be the bear here, because usually I'm the optimist here, but I can assure you there's no more new construction happening in Fluvanna County anytime soon. So what we've got is what we've got as far as Fluvanna County.
Chris Fairchild emphasized this on this show.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. I mean, Fluvanna could be in the position that like Texas and Idaho are in and Utah are in with California. They're exited. I mean, and everything that's going on politically in Albemarle and Charlottesville right now, I think some folks would like to be out a little bit further because it's not a great climate to be in right now. And I hate to be negative, but
Interesting. Green is the outlier here. Green only
Right.
went down 1%
Right.
year over year, and it only went up 3% in the cost of a unit up on that end of it.
NGIC has really changed the whole dynamic of Greene County. I mean, when they did that shift, what do they call it when they move everybody out and new people in?
PCS,
PCS?
permanent station change.
Right. So, I mean, when that happened, Pretty Creek, I think we did something like 70 or 80 appraisals in Pretty Creek the year that happened.
Wow.
And the pricing went through the roof. Green's it's basically Albemarle light right now as far as pricing goes.
2018, 245, today 350. Let's call it $100,000
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, and great access to Albemarle and Charlottesville with 29. So it's a great place to have a family if you work in the county.
So what do you think?
NGIC provides a lot of consistent movement for us with housing because you have people, I don't know, the max that people usually stay in one place, and there are always exceptions, right? It's going to be 4 years. And even that's pretty rare, at least from my personal experience. Maybe that's just the particular MOS that I'm used to people being in, but really it's more like 2 to 3, right? And so that gives a lot of nice rotation of people who are coming in and oftentimes wanting to buy a home. Wanting to buy a home and then leave it and rent it, because that's really huge in the military community. Being able to use that opportunity to invest. while you're
MOS
moving
is
around.
military occupational specialty.
Thank you.
Job.
This is a really good comment here, something that has not been discussed on Real Talk yet. Jerry, you're routinely highlighting the struggles of schools and transportation and how it's impacting quality of life for students. Folks and families move to Crozet for the school system. When does the topic of conversation be moving away from certain school systems in areas like this because the transportation is unreliable and our children in Albemarle County are spending hours on buses round trips each day? That's from a mom named Leslie Moore in Crozet.
It's a good question.
That is a great question. Who wants to touch on that one?
Right now, I don't think it's affecting anything because it's really local knowledge. I know when we moved to Albemarle almost 10 years ago, we did a lot of research through the internet. We're looking at quality of life ratings and things like that. Charlottesville still places very high on those quality of life surveys. A lot of magazines. I mean, UVA just, they moved up the rankings in public universities again. So I think folks coming into the area from outside, they're looking at that ancillary information, and I don't know that they're going to understand the struggles that we're having right now with some of those things. But I'm hoping that, the local government just sort of gets their stuff together and fix it, because if it continues on, I think you're going to start getting some negative press on it outside of the area.
What do you guys think? Good
I
question.
think it already does. I just don't think it's been on everyone's radar, right? When I first moved to the area, I lived at the lake, and I had been homeschooling previously because we had been very transitory, and my kids were very young. So, like, when I say I was homeschooling, it was kindergarten, and popped my kiddo into the school system. and there was like an hour one way spent on the bus, and I was like, you know what, this is not, I'm not here for this. I've already been homeschooling, I'll just continue to do so. And then later moved to Scottsville, where the school was right up the road. It was a much simpler situation, and popped kiddos right back in. So I think that
So it impacted.
happens. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that was in 2000, very end of 2008, beginning of 2009. Yeah.
In our particular neighborhood, the school's 3.1 miles away, literally
Mm-hmm.
from our house. Round one way, 52 minutes to go 3.1 miles.
Yeah.
52 minutes.
That's a
So,
long time.
A
Usually the first
kindergartner,
pickup.
a
Yeah.
kindergartner would be on the bus. Nikki, I'm gonna throw this back to you. Mom
Go for
here.
it. Yeah.
Everyone's here as a parent. A kindergartner is on the bus 52 minutes times 2. Let's call that, what is that, an hour and 45 minutes? Hour and 44 minutes right there. Kindergarten, Nikki.
Well, and I will tell you, a lot of this that we've seen, well, I don't know about a lot, right? I think there is more of this than people are acknowledging, the whole COVID life, right? And things like challenges with buses. And our county's trying. I don't know about the city as much. I know quite a few bus drivers with the county, with Albemarle County. That's where I drove for a few months before being a mom ruled me out of being able to do that because I couldn't get childcare for my kids, right? What are they going to do? Are they maybe not going to work? Or maybe they're going to take part-time work? Or maybe they're going to be a VA? Or maybe they're going to do something remote, not in our state at all, right? There are a lot of things where we're like, oh, hey, we need people working. Well, to have people working, they have to have a certain stability of life and a certain ability to drive into where they need to work. All of these things are tied together. And so when you have people who are saying, oh, you know what, I'm not going to take that job because it screws with my ability to get my kid to and from school, whether that's on a bus or not, but not having the bus makes a big difference.
Well said. Leslie follows up by saying, Nikki is all over this. Please ask the panel if homes with proximity, close proximity to schools will hold values longer than those that are further away from schools, because we have all had too much frustration with this so far. Who wants to touch that?
But that's always been the case, right? Schools that are closer to that. I mean, out in Fluvanna County, where I raised my children, they were on the bus for an hour all the time at kindergarten level. But it was just it was where I could afford at the time on that kind of thing. But this is not just exclusive to us. I have the same situation with our daughter up in Connecticut, in the middle of a metropolis area. That my grandson is on the bus for an hour to go to kindergarten, right? And and it's, again, the same thing. It's a few miles away. Problem is, they don't have bus drivers. Nobody wants to drive for that. So is that the main reason why this is happening, or is it some other reason?
Well, I think the reason is the bus drivers are severely underpaid. The quality of life on the school bus is not so great anymore. The word incorrigible has been used with the behavior on the bus.
Criminal's a better word.
Yeah, there's another one. I mean, Judah talked about a story a couple of weeks ago, how one of his teacher friends from school, Charlottesville City School System, I believe, this particular teacher had students in the class with earbuds in, on their iPhones, vaping in class, sent to the principal's office. The principal couldn't do anything about it, sent them immediately back to the classroom, and finally the teacher quit.
Well, my wife pre-COVID worked in the transportation department for Fluvanna Public Schools. In the interim, we have moved our 14-year-old daughter into a private school. Our son goes to a private school, and it's the best thing for us. I mean, I would hear the stories my wife would come home with what was going on the buses, and it's amazing. I mean, when I say criminal, some things going on those buses should be a criminal offense, but it doesn't get anywhere because it's children, you know, and they give them a lot of latitude anymore.
So when is this going to start impacting the market? I think that's the
That's the
question.
question. Okay.
That's the question.
I've been doing this for 25 years. I've tried to trend proximity to schools. If you're in a subdivision, like say Forest Lakes, where there's schools right there in the subdivision, we actually see a little bit of a stall around the schools because of all the traffic activity. I've never been able to prove that proximity to a school added any additional value, and we've tried to find that.
I can tell you from a market perspective, if we are trying to find, on the ground street, if we have a young family with children, proximity to schools is huge. Somebody my age, empty nester, not so much.
Yeah.
Well, and then it would be a deterrent,
Because of the traffic.
Absolutely.
Before and after.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because who wants
Us
to deal
old
with that
people
unless
don't
you
wake
need
up
to?
until after the kids go
Well,
to school.
so
You
I
wake
was-
up at 4:30.
I was at a friend's house in
I do.
Ohio, not being a realtor because I'm not licensed in the state of Ohio. And we were driving around looking at things, and I was like, "Ooh, that looks great for your parents," based on what we were talking about. She was like, "Oh no, there's a school right here."
Yeah.
And we hashed that through, and that was a huge disadvantage to several homes for her mom and stepdad who are currently under contract in Ohio. Yay, go them.
I think the answer, though, is it's to be determined. The market is going to react to what's going on. I mean, obviously, as many issues as we're having with transportation for the kids, it's got to affect it in some way. But we just haven't had enough time yet to figure it out.
So let me ask then, where is this new? Because it's not new in Fluvanna. Kids have been riding the bus for over an hour in Fluvanna at least since 2008, right?
I think it's newer now.
Jerry just outlined where it's new.
I think it's way
Okay.
newer now in the Crozet area,
Yeah.
way newer now in the Keswick area,
Okay. Sure.
certainly way newer now in the city of Charlottesville,
Yeah.
where like these areas that were hotbeds for folks migrating or moving to because of the school systems, now we're dealing with the stuff that maybe the outer counties have been dealing with all along.
Yeah,
And then on top of
they're
that-
finally hitting being understaffed. Sorry, go ahead.
No, please, go ahead.
And having those challenges that because everyone's moving to those areas, of course they're going to have those challenges. They have overpopulated schools would be my guess. I don't have that data in front of me, but when you have everyone trying to move toward a school,
And this whole rebalancing of this work at home and having to come back
The
into
COVID
work.
changed everything.
yes.
But it's starting to go back that way, and that's part of the impact, right? Part of the impact is now, one of the parents need to go back to the office a
Right.
certain number of days of the week, which is changing the whole configuration.
Well, how about the families where both parents work?
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
That's my
Or
daughter's dealing with
single-parent
right now.
households.
Or
I mean,
so-
I deal with
yeah.
that on a regular. It is
Nikki.
something that I factor in to when I'm planning things for our staff. We do not have education that is planned by my office specifically that starts before 9:30, because some of us actually can't get our kids to school through a
Right.
drop-off line until about 9ish, right after. And we've had to find a lot of flexibility in finding ways to work with what things are right now.
So I did not break
Good take,
down
Nikki.
Crozet, but what I'm really concerned about this, and thank you, Jerry, for bringing it up, is this is going to make the wealth gap get a little bit wider and
Sure it
wider
is.
and wider. And because 2022, Albemarle County, single-family detached, no new construction, there was 241 units sold, 22, 575 was the median sales price. 21, there was 916, so that's roughly a 19% drop. But the sales price last year was 505. Big number, right? But it's also 14% up year over year. So not only is if you're going to be in Albemarle County, right, you're going to have to pay top dollar to be there. Plus, your kid's going to be on the school bus for, 1 hour roughly for 3 to 4 miles. We're blessed, right, that
Yeah.
we can say, okay, we're not going to do this. We're going to send our kid to private school. Our children didn't go to private school. They went to public school. But,
Right.
So this is just kind of widening this gap any wider.
You want to touch on that?
I mean, I think the reason it's becoming more prevalent in local media is, one, Crozet and areas like that have more folks there with means, and they're more affluent, they're more connected. The old saying, it's more about who you know, not what you know. And the networking that happens in those very tight communities like that, they have a little bit more voice because of their connections, and I think that's why we're hearing more about it. And it's a good thing, because this is a problem that needs to be solved. But
Well said. Well said, Nikki.
I want to derail just a minute because we've been talking about bus drivers and some of this situation, and I just want to say that those bus drivers out there oftentimes are treated poorly by
Students.
school employees, by students, by
Parents.
parents.
yes.
And I'm not saying everyone, and most of those bus drivers are really great people who are working their tails off
Salt
for
of the
little
earth
pay to make sure your children are safe, truly. And there are people who honestly try to run your children over on a regular basis. Like, they don't care. That little stop arm is out, and the bus drivers are dealing with that. They're dealing with people who are too young to actually be able to cross the street by themselves and figuring out how to make that happen, right? Dropping children off to what should be a family member below a certain age in an area where we do not have our schools scheduled in such a way that high schoolers can get them off the bus. There are just constant challenges, and making it a safe and oftentimes educational environment. no, they're not teachers, but a lot of times they're having conversations with your kids that your kids aren't willing to have with you. And I say that from personal experience. So like kudos, like Amy, I actually think I have her in my phone still as Amy Best Driver. And then Kathy Cobb, who helped train me
Earl
for part
Smith?
of my training.
Bob Warren?
Yeah, I mean, like I could just, the list goes on.
Yeah,
Right?
they're watching.
Oh, yay, awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, thank you. But truly, I think that when we're having this conversation, we need to remember to say thanks to them because they do not get thanked often enough. And for those of you who already do that, thank you. And if you don't, rethink how you're doing things.
Well
Amen.
said. Nikki, dropping fire today. Sydney Blair giving you some props. Nikki Chambers. Keith Smith, jump in here.
So, Nikki, you're a bus driver, right? You used to
I
drive-
still have my Class B on my,
So you
license
come
just
from
in
this
case.
from a very personal perspective.
And
it was
a
only
single
for a few
mom.
months. Well, and that's why I did it.
Yeah.
though. That's the thing. I
But-
did it, and I couldn't get a route that was where my kids were. And when I lost that one part of childcare I needed, and they did work with me to a point. So,
So how do you fix the problem?
oh crap. Well, this
Money.
goes to our broader picture.
Pay them
That's the
more
thing.
money.
Our whole system is set up to underpay anything education related. When we're talking pre-K through 12, at least.
So even up in Connecticut, the bus drivers are unionized, and they're still big time
Oh, wow.
underpaid. Yeah.
Oh, see, and I was thinking this was going to go a different direction, but no.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and I will say so, one of the selling points has been, and I'm just going to go on the assumption that this is still the case, please correct me if I'm wrong, one of the big perks of being a bus driver was you're a part-time employee, but you get full-time employee benefits. So there were people that would do that part-time job truly just for the benefits. It wasn't for the pay.
That's how it works in Fluvanna.
Yep,
Or
and
did.
because I interviewed with Fulian at the time as well. My understanding is it still works that way. They do job fairs all the time. You can then have insurance for yourself and for your family beyond, especially if your spouse is 1099 contractor, that type of thing, where health insurance is really expensive and hard to get, especially for our area, right? So that can be a huge selling point. I don't know if people realize that quite enough, or maybe it's not worth it for the challenge of a really hard job.
So back in the day when we had 5 companies and multiple tens upon tens of folks working for us, my grandmother, God rest her soul, always used to say, pay your people very well and let them do their job. So we're not paying our bus drivers well, we're not treating them fairly, therefore they're not driving, right? And therefore Jerry's wonderful son is spending 2 hours of his day on a bus.
Well, we're fortunate. My wife's going to drive them to and from school.
Yeah.
I mean,
so close.
but there's others in the neighborhood that are not, where we're legitimately watching 5-year-old spend 2 hours on a bus.
And standing at a bus stop by her or himself.
Well, there's other kids at the bus stop.
I know that, but without a parent at 5, because the parents are working, right? They need to go to work and.
Fortunately, there's generally a good Samaritan parent in the neighborhood
Yeah.
that
Right.
hangs out with the kids at the bus stop. Thank goodness. But I mean, Woody, I'm curious of your thoughts on this because I think this could be the next trend here with real estate, with schools and how things are impacted if it doesn't get changed. Because schools influence decision making on real estate. What
Sure.
happens if the schools aren't performing, and how will that impact decision making with real estate?
I mean, it's a great point. I think that, again, it's a to be determined kind of thing, because, when we're looking at value, we're always looking kind of retrospectively. So once the sales start reflecting that, unfortunately, the way the market's going right now, it's not going to reflect it because of the inventory issue and the pricing going up. So it's really hard to look at it and glean any support for what you're saying out of the data. From an ancillary point of view, I think that it's a good point, and I think it's probably gonna change some things. But we're some time away from that. It's gonna really start happening when the market goes to where we're losing value.
Been doing this since '87. School always impact real estate. Always has, always will.
Oh, I understand.
Quality of schools, getting kids to and from school.
I guess his point is the data we have is in the rears.
It's
So
always
the
in the
data we have now to utilize as a foundation for the argument can't support this because it's data in the rears. So we need to see data over the next, 4 quarters to determine what kind of impact this has, probably beyond 4 quarters.
Right, and with value going up, I mean, overall, I haven't seen anything go down anywhere, so.
Of all the jurisdictions, and I also looked at the other side of the mountain, nothing has went down.
Right.
Volume has dropped.
Yeah,
Right?
maybe it's tied to volume by zip code
Well, yeah,
and neighborhood.
The other thing, if we remember back to the big recession in 08, 09, things that matter to people normally in a normal market, folks will pay less. They want a discount because they're next to a school or they're next to a high voltage power line easement or something like that. Right now, those things mean very little to buyers.
Exactly.
They're willing, because there's nothing to buy. So if they need to move, they find a house, maybe their garden will grow really well underneath that power line easement, but they're willing to accept that.
Your hair
Which
grows
means-
underneath that, by the way,
Oh,
in
is
case
that
you
what it
wondered.
is?
I need to go,
No.
I need to move.
Man, you just made a huge selling point there. Be careful.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so it sounds like because of the market we're in with low inventory, we're probably not really going to see that make a huge difference yet until things level out more. I mean, because how can we? We have such low inventory.
So as the recovering developer at the table,
Yeah.
right? And it's very interesting because I'll just use the word the NIMBYs, right? The people do not want new construction. They always tout overcrowding of schools, and traffic and so forth and so on. But, to go back to your point earlier, Woody, about, look, we need more inventory, we need more homes on that end of it. This is a balancing act, right?
Right.
So if we do not have any more rooftops to help pay for the schools, but the school expenses are going up. So let's say in Albemarle County, we're not producing any more new construction, any more new rooftops on top of it, but we now need to triple a bus driver salary in order to get competent bus drivers. Where's that money come from?
Well, the school expenses are actually going down. They're not going up.
Oh.
Because enrollment is dropping. And when enrollment drops, funding from the Commonwealth drops.
It does.
Students are going to private schools at a greater clip than ever before. So it's the opposite of that. We're seeing the overhead with schools drop because there's less students in the classroom, less teachers in the classroom.
I would have to disagree with you. You're seeing income drop, but their expenses are going up.
No.
Well,
Their expenses are tied to students in the classroom. If you have less kids in the classroom, your overhead is lower. The number one item that's associated with overhead with public schools is teaching kids. There's less kids in the
But do
classroom
you
now.
still have the same amount of teachers you're having on
Less
payroll?
teachers.
Okay.
Yeah, less teachers. So the student-teacher ratio has worsened.
That's true.
It's
Because we're already
worsened.
on a teacher shortage.
We're at a teacher shortage, and it's a serious predicament.
Yeah.
And now what's being discussed is the voucher system. Are you guys following this?
Not closely, but I know exactly what you're
The
talking about.
voucher system just got approved in Arizona. Youngkin's trying to push this in the Commonwealth, where they're going to value a public school education, then allow parents to utilize that value how they see fit to educate their kids.
Yeah.
That'll really change
That
things.
will.
So if the voucher system becomes a reality, the priority for high performing public schools may not be the case anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Well, it's unfair that if you want to send your kids to private school, you still have to pay the same taxes as everyone else. I mean, what do they allocate, $9,000 or $10,000 per kid now?
I don't have the exact number. I think it's like
depends on-
12 or 13.
It depends
Okay, it's
on the
gone up.
jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Some are a little
I'm
bit
not
more.
And that's what Youngkin is saying, what you're saying.
I haven't really kept up with it as much because what brought us to Albemarle originally was I was the assistant assessor for Albemarle County. And so we used to, being in charge of the biggest revenue source for the county, we sort of watched where all of our funds were going, see what we were contributing to. And it's crazy how much money we spend on schools. But I mean, that's the thing. If you want to increase salaries, you're going to have to increase your tax mill rate. That's a hard thing to sell in the city right now because of what's going on with the police departments and all that. You want to raise taxes, people are going to be out in the streets pitchfork and torches with it.
So,
I like you, Woody.
Jerry, you're 100% right. Teachers are a huge part of that, but the other part of that ledger board is the operating expenses doesn't change. The CIP for the buildings, Fluvanna County just built a $20-30 million school that they still need to pay the debt service
Right.
on, right? So there's those things that will keep on rolling on that end of it. So it's not a good sign. I come from the New York City school system back in the 60s and the 70s. So
I can tell.
I know. Thank you.
Comments coming fast and furious. Jamie Turner, the mayor of Gordonsville, wants to know your favorite pour of bourbon here. I don't know if you want to give that answer, Woody Fincham.
What I know, my go-to for cocktails is Basil Hayden, but my favorite is E.H. Taylor small batch.
That's very good. That's very, very good. You have a bottle or two at home?
I have half a bottle right now
Very nice.
that someone gifted me.
Very, very nice.
We need to fix
Hint,
that
hint.
for you.
That's you will not be able to find that.
Oh, it's impossible to find it.
Impossible to find, right?
Yeah.
James Watson, Albemarle County and the city of Charlottesville often have a budget surplus at the end of the fiscal year. Seems like they could just pay bus drivers a competitive rate compared to what truck drivers make. 65 to 80,000 and the problem would be solved. The city and county won't miss that money. Isn't it just come down to money here with the driver shortage? Isn't that what we're dealing with here?
If they paid more money, more people would be there.
Yes, but it's not just the money, it's also quality of work.
Yeah, you have to treat them well.
Because I do remember that was one of the challenges with getting me to a bus route that was with my children. The one that I didn't get that would have kept me as a bus driver, which, hey, I'm really glad I'm where I am. It was a very challenging route, let's just say.
Teachers,
and so they gave it to
coaches,
someone else.
anybody who works with children in the public school system, my hat is off to them. They are
Yeah,
patient
saints.
people. It's a calling in their life for them to want to do that. But I mean, the stories my wife would come home with,
props.
that when she was in the transportation department at Fluvanna, what she would come home and tell us, a kid would just go belligerent on the bus driver, and then it goes into the principal's office, and then the mom and the dad are yelling at the public employees because they're,
Yeah.
it's just there's no respect for them, and that's the bad part.
So back to James's comment, there's two sides to the ledger board, right?
Yeah.
So the Board of Supervisors controls the purse string, so that's where that money is sitting. Then Board of Supervisors have to give it to the school board to go ahead and spend it and earmark it from it. So James, the person to reach out to is Ned Galloway and the Board of Supervisors and say, look, you've got the surplus, let's move this over, let's give this to the...
Or you say to the Board of Supervisors, don't allocate the money to the school board unless the school board straight up answers these 3 or 4 questions. You will not get this money until you answer these 3 or 4 questions.
And
That's hard to do.
That could be a PR nightmare. I mean, that would be a PR nightmare. And it would take a Board of Supervisor that has tremendous backbone. Why don't I put it like that? Okay, tremendous backbone.
I know where you were going.
Okay,
So
tremendous
in
backbone.
order to quote Ned Galloway, watch come budget season where they allocate their money, and then you really know what they're thinking and where they're going to be voting on. that stuff.
The superintendent and the school board have a tremendous amount of sway in what happens one way or the other. I mean, when I was the deputy assessor in Suffolk, they had a picketing situation where anytime there was a city council meeting, teachers would come out and picket. They got what they wanted because the media and PR from it was just horrible for the city.
Jamie Turner's just, dude, I love the show. He says, that's incredible, Woody. I currently have 2 bottles of EHT single barrel. If we ever cross paths, I'll be sure to bring a pour for you, sir.
What you doing later, man?
Like in 10 minutes.
If ever paths
Mayor of
cross, just
Gordonsville,
make it
Jamie
happen.
Turner, giving you some props right there, Woody. I'm going to tag Woody. I will tag Woody on this. Nikki Chambliss, you jump in here.
I'm just saying Jamie just needs to show up. The show's over in just a little bit.
Or show up during the show. We're good with that.
Everyone is
Oh,
itching
man.
for that. That's some of the best bourbon money can buy. So more are coming in right here. This is from Brittany Gray, the realtor. She says, if we had an approved voucher system, we could then get more charter school options. The purpose in Youngkin's plan is to grow the charter education. He wants 21 charter schools, whereas we have 7 in Virginia. And then she also says, it does not just come down to money. You would not believe how little drivers choose to live off of because they truly love what they do for kids. It was also the mask mandate and the ugly truth that was brought out from it by parents and the administrators. I know several drivers in Almara who walked last year for the same reason. Same with Fluvanna. We had 2 on the show, Bob Warren and Earl Smith.
But here's the thing. We've had a bus driver shortage for years, at least since when I was in this, and that was,
Long time.
10 years ago,
Yeah.
I was switching to the Walton route. I think I shared a memory today. So this is not a new thing. Yes, there are newer challenges that impact it in big ways, but it's not just those things, because this is not a new thing. And then I know for sure Albemarle and Fluvanna were short on drivers 10 years ago.
Dude, you're killing it today. Seriously, this is right up your wheelhouse, this commentary.
Can I share another thing, school related?
Please.
Because we haven't talked about it. Actually, I texted my kid during the show because I wanted to make sure they were good with me talking publicly about their business. And I do that on a regular basis. I think that they should be able to have some privacy in their stuff. But my kid right now is going through the process of just jumping out of junior year to get a GED. And I will tell you, my kid's dollars that is being taken away from the school is more than normal because my kiddo is an IEP kid. So an individualized education plan, I do believe, or something
Yes.
like that.
Both of ours are that way.
So, and part of my kid being on an IEP is part of why I'm willing to say, you know what, yeah, sure, you know what, if this is the route you really want to go, and you're willing to do A, B, C, and D, and commit to those things, then let's do this. It's not my preferred route, not because I think anything less than GED. I like for my kid to have more of that structure that school provides, which is part of that IEP aspect. So
Great take. Keith Smith.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That is,
Nikki's in fuego.
so that is fearlessly authentic. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, that's
Thank
super
you.
mom
Thank you
material.
for
You
doing
should check in with your kid on that.
You know, that's what I love about what we do here all the time. We
And
get-
she's getting props from Sydney Blair, Autumn Sweet, Clove, Croucher, Aaron Hall, Hal, Nicholas Erpy, all giving you props on what you're
thank you
saying right
guys.
now.
Yeah. I mean, parenting is not for the weak at heart at all.
The best, hardest thing ever, longest, shortest thing ever.
Yes.
Well, when you get to grandparenting, it's a little different. It's a little bit more
Oh, yeah.
fun, right? Right, Woody?
Yeah, we spent
We'll
some
see.
time with both of our grandsons yesterday.
I
It
saw
seems
that.
like your grandson's going to be a soccer player from your Facebook page.
Oh my gosh, well, I'm so happy to see that. And his mom is such a baseball fan that that I think I'm not going to get invited over for Thanksgiving if he plays soccer.
Oh, no. Well, so I may not end up having grandkids, but I'm all for adopting random people's children. I mean, not like just stealing your kids, just so you know. I'm not trying to do
Yeah,
that.
you have a big heart.
Yeah.
You have a very big heart.
So, Woody, I have to ask you a question because
sir.
I get this question asked to me by every single one of the Board of Supervisors or City Council members that I talk to in all the 6 jurisdictions. What can I tell them to convince them residential homes is good for the county? They all reject that idea that any new construction from residential rooftops perspective is a drain on the county, a drain on the county's resources. Does that hold water? Does that make sense to you?
It does to a point because, I mean, every time you have a new household in, that's more resources the county has to provide. So it does cost more money. However, if we're doing our mill rate correctly for our budget every year, you can plan for that. We really, Fluvanna could be green if they really wanted to be, in the sense that we could be a bedroom community for Charlottesville and to Richmond to a point, because I have several neighbors who commute to Richmond every day. Why we're not looking at it that way, I don't know. I mean, change is hard. I mean, and you're dealing with a mostly agrarian county, and they tend to evolve slowly. And that's not a bad thing, it's just what it is.
Well, the moment that they approved or started building 4,500 lot subdivision in the middle of the county, we were going to be where we are today. I did the math last night just on our county. The break-even point's about 275. In other words, the tax assessed value is about 270. So if your home is worth 275 plus or minus, then you are at the break-even point. So if you're below that, you are costing the county money. But if you're above that, in our case, we're actually contributing.
Does that also take into account the other fees and taxes?
No, this is just a simple number of total
Yeah.
rooftops during the
Gotcha.
budget divided. Just a simple
Gotcha.
mathematical formula. The total of number of roofs, total value based on their
Yeah.
assessed value versus the budget equals X dollars. So if you're over, if you're building homes or homes are getting built for $350, $450, something like that, you're a positive cash flow to the county. Does that math make sense to you?
I mean, it does. I mean, that's simple arithmetic. It's more, the calculus is way more sophisticated than just, the arithmetic.
Remember, New York City school
No,
system.
same here. I
Right.
mean, you start getting to all these nuances that go with it, you'd lose me in a second. But I mean, there's got to be, I would imagine with the private personal property taxes and everything else that goes into it, that number's probably going to come down some.
Yeah, this is just strictly
Yeah.
rooftops and versus budget. I'm not even including tax of commercial revenue, personal property. I just did a simple.
I mean, because
math
every
formula.
roof you build, if it's most of the time it's a family, so you're going to have 2 people earning income there. They've
Sure.
got teenagers. That's 3 cars right there.
Sure.
So
Well, speaking of taxes, county and city, Albemarle, Charlottesville, are talking real estate tax increase already. Tax rate increase, real estate tax rate increase. And we know the assessments are going to go up.
yes.
So this is going to be another, let's hope to God the personal property taxes don't go up next year. Maybe the used car market cools off by then. We are legitimately, viewers and listeners, I hope you're listening to this. Leadership in Albemarle and the city of Charlottesville is talking about raising the real estate tax rate literally as we speak. Assessments are going to go up. What is that going to have impact on the housing ecosystem? Who wants to start with that one?
Well, the Mets are doing pretty good this year. Look, it's schools, taxes, interest rates. The impacts are multiple to the market. My prediction, for what it's worth, is I think we're going to be closer to 7 to 8% 30-year mortgage. I think we're going to be holding closer to closer to Jerry's reduction, which I agree with him now, that we're probably going to cross the board seeing a 20%, maybe even more than that. But we're going to see a price increase going along that range. So I think as long as something doesn't change that calculus, the real estate market is still going to be chugging along on that end of it, but it's going to leave people out. People
Yes.
are being left out in this trend or this shift.
Who wants to touch that? Woody?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Albemarle's ever going to have not ever, you never know what's going to happen 10 years down the line, but right now it's a destination for folks. They want to be here. It's a good quality of life. I love living in the area. I don't think we'll ever live anywhere else to get everything we want here. But, if it gets super expensive, yeah, but I mean, you have to look at your nominal tax rate overall. I mean, and everybody's going up everywhere. I mean, it's very rare to see a mill rate go down anywhere.
So define the mill rate, please. So
The mill rate is what you're paying for your assessment. So the mill rate's basically calculated by what they assess your property at, divided by 100 times whatever the mill rate is. And Fluvanna is...
Oh, God, you'd have to ask me that. It's 90, they lowered it.
Yeah.
You're talking about this percent per 100?
Yeah.
They lowered it, but I know this much. I'm paying because my value went up, my interest rate, my tax rate went down. This is the first time that my home since 2000, my home in Fluvanna County, dollars, the amount of money I pay equals to the same size home in Albemarle County. It always was a huge difference, right? But dollars that are coming out of my pocket per year is I'm on par with Albemarle County now.
Wow.
Albemarle County's real estate tax rate is 85 cents per $100 of assessed value. Charlottesville City's real estate tax rate is 96 cents per $100 of value.
And
that is straight up gentrification right there.
And I think Fluvanna is maybe 86, but I have to
Well,
double check.
you've also got to look at the load of services carried by each of the municipalities, too. Charlottesville provides more as far as water and,
Oh, yeah.
and trash, so it has to be higher.
And gas. Brittany Gray says 87 cents for Fluvanna
Is
County.
87?
Thank you.
Okay,
87
thank
per
you.
100.
Thank
Travis Hackworth says 77 cents per 100 in Danville. Viewers and listeners, you do not BS the viewers and listeners here. They know straight up what's going on here. This is a difficult question. I'm going to start with you on this one. Okay, this is a challenging question. We're seeing price reductions left and right. Okay, you got a home. Jamie Turner asked me to ask you this question specifically. You got a home on a street that sold during the pandemic for X amount of dollars when it was the Wild West.
Right.
You got a home 2 doors down on the same street when it's not the Wild West, when it's tumbleweeds, selling for X amount of dollars minus 10 or 15% because of the price reductions. What is that going to do to the value of the home that's sold during the pandemic?
That person could be in a bad situation if they're tapping all their equity out of their property. A lot of folks are buying conventional anymore, and they're putting 20% or more down. So there's a cushion there to some degree. But it's a seesaw. I mean, it's supply and demand economics, right? So, I mean, we're going to start seeing some of that happening because, again, I mean, your statistics earlier, Keith, you were saying there's no change year to year over days on market in Fluvanna, right?
Days on market's flat.
Yeah, so I mean, that surprises me actually because we are seeing a lot of price improvements or price reductions. You're starting to see more concessions happen. Nobody's waiving their home inspections anymore. So the market's starting to normalize in a different direction, but it's still a seller's market all day long.
That's why I'm not as bullish as Keith is when it comes to the values of the homes. There was a boatload of real estate sold during the pandemic, a boatload at crazy bananas scenarios. And that stuff is not happening anymore. And the home next door is a comp for the one that's selling right now, or the one right now is a comp for the one that sold during the
but you
pandemic.
said tumbleweeds, and there's not a place where that exists
We're a ways
unless the
from that,
house
yeah.
is just.
We're down
trash.
20% in volume year over year.
Yeah, but
depending on the
not
jurisdiction you're
in
looking
that.
at.
So we were talking Waynesboro?
No, City of Charlottesville, Albemarle County.
No,
I think
no,
they're down.
the question was specifically to Waynesboro?
No,
Oh,
it was
okay.
Charlottesville, Albemarle County.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason I'm doing it is I'm looking at Waynesboro right now. So there's something in follow-up with that question for Woody. So I'm now tracking, to Jerry's point, I'm now tracking list price versus sold price.
Yeah, price reductions.
What's the percentage difference? So I just happened to pick Waynesboro for this year, median. So the median list price was 239, sold price was 245. So we're going up versus list
And
versus
that's not
sold.
new construction, right?
No, I dropped new construction.
Right,
out.
right, because there's a lot of that going on over there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to look in Fluvanna County while everybody's talking.
No, go
So-
Almar and Charlottesville City.
Almar and
Almar and
Charlottesville.
Charlottesville City is what Jamie's asking.
Got
here.
it. I
Nikki
apologize.
Chambliss,
Yeah.
jump in here.
Oh, gosh.
It's a big question.
Well, and my brain's just going like a million miles a minute right now for all the things, right? Because, for one, it's not tumbleweeds. Like, that just doesn't exist. Even for a challenging property, right? And I think a lot of this price improvements, as Ivy Haynes shared on Facebook for something, and I was like, oh, nicely done,
It's
Ivy.
called branding.
And she does that well. For her price improvements, though, I mean, some of that is, again, sellers adjusting, right? We're not in the same market. But it's not, I feel like the way you're framing it makes it sound like, oh my God, like there's bad things happening. And it's not really. When you go big picture, right? 5 years from now, what we're going to see is, okay, the spike, and we're going to maybe see like a settling down, and it will continue to still increase because that's what real estate does, right? So, and I'm moving away from my mic to talk with my hands.
No, I respect that. I respect that. Just playing devil's advocate for the sake of
Yeah.
the talk show.
Well,
yeah.
Continuing on your point, Jerry, though, if the
Which
market
you do well.
if the interest rates do go up to a certain level, that is going to cause consumers to back off.
It's already done that.
Well, it's going to happen. The problem is going to be when someone has to move, they're not in a good equity position, and then they have to do a short sale or they have to sell it under market value. If enough of that happens, that's where the danger point is.
Yeah, that's one of the point. Thank you. Said it better than I would. And we're also year over year, Almar County, City of Charlottesville, 20% down in sales volume, year over year. That is a bear market. Definition of a bear market.
But it's really interesting.
Well, no, that's not actually the definition of a bear market because when you're talking bear and bull, you're talking about actual price. Prices are up. So we're in a weird place where it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. We are having a volume back off, but I mean, when you're looking at the stock market, they don't look at actual volume, they're looking at what people are actually paying.
That's true, but here's the definition. A bear market occurs when a market experiences prolonged price, sales, or volume declines.
Okay. I stand corrected.
So it's weird. We're both
Yeah.
simultaneously, right? We're both a bear and a bull, right? We're bear on volume, which Jerry's 1,000%.
Well, and
right?
to quote Stranger Things, we're in the upside down.
Yeah, that was good. Stranger Things
Nicely
got a
done.
reference. Woody with the pop culture here. I love that show.
That's great.
Charlottesville, year-to-date, single-family detached, no new construction, median, list price was $455, sold was $475. So we're in the year-to-date, now I'm not comparing it to last year, I'm just looking at what the price started, and this is a full year, right? So, see what happened in the last 60 days, or that this year is.
Yeah, I'm glad you're doing 60 days because
Yeah.
we have a skew.
Yeah.
There's a tangent with the early part of the year.
Yeah. So I'm going to do last 60 days. Thank you for catching me on that.
Kevin Yancey, Waynesboro. My neighbor directly behind me listed their home 2 weeks ago. His price point is well above current market values. 40-year-old brick home, and it's had 8 showings in that time frame. So that's positive and speaks to what your guys are saying. This comment's coming from Spencer. My neighbor down the road has listed their home. The home is listed at for $50,000 than what the house next door to it sold during the pandemic.
And maybe the agent priced it right. Maybe the agent didn't price it wrong. So back to the 60 days, City of Charlottesville.
Yeah.
Median list was 448. Median sold was 455. So we're going up.
Yeah.
Right.
But the
volume,
margin's getting smaller.
the margin is definitely getting smaller.
So
and that's to
we are
Jerry's
starting
point.
to teeter a little bit.
Yeah.
But teetering doesn't mean bad. It just means we might be normalizing just to our new normal.
Which last I checked is what we've been talking about wanting for months now.
Yeah.
Maybe even years at this point.
But it's good we live in a very wine-friendly area. I think a lot of real estate agents and appraisers have really depended on having a glass of wine in the evening. It's been a hard couple of years.
Sure, is it Sharissa Kwan? She's giving you some props right now
Oh,
on the
awesome.
program. Keep the comments coming in fast and furious, guys. We're happy to answer them. They're very straightforward and their commentary.
Ooh, this is interesting.
Please.
Which one?
Albemarle County, speaking to your point, last 60 days, like I said, this is a new thing that I'm starting to watch, is that spread. Because to Jerry's point, when it starts going the other way, list versus sold, that's when we're going to start tracking it. Last 60 days, single-family detached, no new construction, Albemarle County, list was 549, sold was 550. So to your point, that's there. And to Jerry's point, I think the next 60 days and 90 days is going to be very interesting.
Yes.
tracking that number.
For sure.
Nikki Chambliss.
No, I don't disagree. I think truly when it seems like I'm disagreeing, I'm just saying, to me, I'm viewing it from the taking a step back picture, right?
Yeah.
I don't
And
think we're
that's
disagreeing. We're having
No.
a conversation.
Oh, this is great.
Oh, no, I definitely want to disagree with Jerry, just
Yeah.
on point,
Please.
just on principle, because he's fun to disagree with. But that's, when we're going that back and forth, being able to take that step back. And the reason that I'm saying that so often and kind of being a little redundant here is that I think a lot of times people who are listening to the show or agents who are sharing this out to their clients, that's the kind of perspective that you want to be able to have when you are looking at whether or not to buy or whether or not now is a good time to sell, or, oh my gosh, you know what, I don't quite have as much equity in this home. I was not expecting to need to move a year after purchasing, which is, no one's buying expecting to do that, hopefully, right?
No matter
so
what,
being
you're
able
gonna
to
be upset.
evaluate that from that bigger picture, right?
In
But
a normal
also-
market, if you could buy and sell in a year, you're going to be upside down.
Yes.
It's just
Yes,
the way
exactly.
it's going.
Not during the pandemic. And I know
That-
that wasn't a
well-
normal market. That's an anomaly. I know that's what you guys are going to say. But that's 2 years of our past life.
It definitely is 2 years of our past life, and that's, at that point, you're talking about some risky investing, if you want to call it that, right?
Sure.
So that
Speculating,
needs
you
to
would
be,
call that.
I call that Vegas. That's what that feels like to me. Hey, some people win big, and that's great, but at what point do you make sure you take something home, right? So a house is not a thing that I'm wanting to do that with, and some people are quite willing and able and fine doing that.
I mean, I'm just looking at the last 60 days, the medium, just what's available, there's only 83, and we're at 625 as a list price, median list price. Just huge numbers.
Yeah, that really is.
We should talk jumbo market. Questions are coming in on the jumbo market here for Woody Fincham. Rising rates in the jumbo market. Your take on that?
That market's a really weird one because it's kind of insulated to some degree. We do a lot of work in that market. A lot of those folks are capable of writing a check for pretty much anything they want. Those that are borrowing and getting into the jumbo market, because that ceiling got extended and a lot of folks were able to transition up into it. And that's one of the markets that I am a little worried about, in the sense that some people that got into the jumbo market probably didn't belong in the jumbo market from an income perspective and lifestyle perspective. Though we'll probably see some of that being an issue at some point. But I mean, even when the not pandemic, but when we were in the bigger recession, 12, 13 years ago, that market still functioned and flowed pretty well.
Locally.
Locally.
Jumbo market defined in 2022, mortgages larger than $647,200 or more.
And
That's the
VA
jumbo.
got in on it last year, and
gonna say that.
with VA doing jumbos, that's added a whole nother consumer base to it.
Roger Voisinay. Am I saying
Hey, Roger.
Voisinay the right way there?
Roger's the man.
Roger
Yeah,
is the
I'm like, I don't know
man.
if
Roger Voisinay of Remax, one of the best real estate discussions in a long time with a very, very knowledgeable group. Roger, your thoughts on the jumbo market. Roger, your thoughts on the homes that sold during the pandemic on one street at X amount of dollars and the homes that are selling right now at $50,000, $60,000 less. All those topics, Roger, please put it in the feed.
Crozet, just decided to dig into Crozet, right? No new construction, single-family detached, so forth and so on. Last 60 days, 49 units sold. So when I use Crozet, guys, everybody knows, we got to actually put in the schools because you can't break down Crozet in a sub-market. So this is everybody that would have Weston Albemarle as their high school.
Right.
49 units sold, 719 on the list price, 725 on the sold price. So the delta's again
It's tight.
is getting a little bit tighter.
What do you make of that?
Normalization.
There's only 19 for sale, by the way.
Okay.
And the other metric I use in this market too is we're getting a lot more calls from agents who have problematic potential sellers that think that their property's worth this much, and they're like, well, let's call and get an appraisal in. And we, the thing about our appraisers, we're used to people throwing things at us, not being happy with us, because we tell people things they don't want to hear all the time. And so a lot of agents will use us as kind of a crutch in the sense that they know what the price should be, the listing price, but they can't convince their seller to do that. And so they bring us in, and we kind of help add a little bit of common sense to it.
How often do you do that?
Right now, we're seeing a huge
A lot of it.
increase in it. Yeah, I mean, we weren't doing it at all in the pandemic. I mean, once in a while, it would be, you know, a type of property that was built to the specific use for that particular person. And so it's just kind of a white elephant in the market. So, and they were having a hard time pricing it. But other than that, we weren't doing a lot of them.
So in that same Crozet area, just to put a little different perspective on it, there's 19 available. In the last 60 days, 49 went under pending. That's a huge spread.
Jennifer, watching the program, lives in Crozet, Old Trail. Panel and Jerry, we bought a house during the pandemic. We had no opportunity to do a home inspection, and we had to bring money to the table because it was so competitive. My husband and I now talk routinely of how we regretted this purchase.
Oh, really?
I hate to hear
I'm
that.
so sorry to hear that.
I will tell you, if you dig into NAR's
70% of people that bought in the pandemic
That's
regret it.
exactly right.
I mean, we do a lot of litigation support work for divorces and partitions and, you know, construction default, that kind of thing. I think, looking at my little crystal ball here, the folks that were buying sight unseen on some of these properties are probably going to want to start doing some more litigation over the next 2 or 3 years, because they're going to find maybe a latent defect that was not disclosed. It's going to be an interesting market.
So you're seeing, wow, that's a good topic right there. You're seeing the folks that bought sight unseen have some legal potential recourse or leverage for failure to disclose problems with the house?
Well, if the agents are required to disclose any latent defect that they're
Aware of.
correct me if you're aware of it, right? So if there's something going on with a property that obviously was there, and obviously is a ambiguous term here,
Sure.
and that's usually what the litigation will basically roll over, is whether or not it was known.
So is it the property owner doing it or the lender doing the litigation?
Well, if the lender has to take back a bad loan, I mean,
They're the ones.
I don't know if they would in that situation or not.
I think that would be the
So
property owner.
are we seeing this happening, or are
I only
we
see it with the consumer.
projecting it?
Well, no, he's saying
You're
this could be a
saying you're
potential
seeing it.
trend to follow.
It's a potential thing to watch, because
Okay.
there were a lot of consumers that, and when they sue, they don't just sue the seller that they bought the property from. They sue all the
Everybody.
agents,
They bundle.
the mortgage
Everybody.
companies, the
Well, let me
appraisers,
ask, how does that work?
everybody.
So I had clients that bought during the pandemic. Before I was team leader, I was working directly with buyers and sellers. And because of the pandemic hitting right then, there were challenges with using that home warranty. There were challenges with the
Right.
house that were unexpected, and an array of them. And I felt incredibly bad for them, and I recommended a lawyer that they could talk to.
Sure.
And the reality is that from my understanding, and I am not a lawyer, I just am not even trying to be one. I'm not even going to play one on TV, right? And my understanding was that they just did not have recourse because of it being a buyer or state. Because you'd have to prove that the seller knew these problems were there.
So the struggle with that, because I've had some
Yeah.
experience with this, is exactly what you just said. So we as agents make you sign a disclosure saying that you are obligated to disclose to us any material defect
Right.
that you're aware of. I come from a different perspective. I walk to the house and I can see a material defect because of my background and say, are you sure you want to sign this? Because, you know, I now know there's a material defect, so I am going to disclose this. Sometimes I lose, in the time of great craziness,
You lost them.
I lost listings, but
Yeah.
I did the right thing,
Oh,
right?
That's the right way to do
Well, you
it.
we did-
protected your tail.
Well, we just did the right thing. But when Jerry and I have been talking about this when it started 2 years ago, that this was not a good thing.
No, it's
It
not.
was not a good thing, and we are now starting to see the results of that.
More coming in, guys. And you want to touch on this anymore, Woody, before we get off this one?
I'm
You know
good.
what? Can
Okay,
I?
please.
So I would say, and this is the advice that I would give to anyone with a home, but especially those who have bought recently, go out of your way to make sure that you're treating your house that you live in as an investment. And I generally don't recommend people viewing that when they're purchasing as a financial investment, but you need to treat it like one. It can be. It's just most people don't treat it like one.
Sir Neil Williamson, welcome to the program.
So my suggestion to some folks that are kind of in that, reach out to a trusted advisor, reach out to somebody at this table, or we'll refer you out to a home inspector and kind of get an understanding of what's going on in your home, and then you can start taking the steps from there.
More coming in fast and furious, guys. We're going to try to get to as many of these as humanly possible. Jerry, please ask Woody's take on if he sees softening in the outer counties first or over the mountain with rates rising and potentially eclipsing 7 or going to 8, as you said.
We do a lot of work in Louisa, Waynesboro. You named the rural burg. We're doing it.
It's from Thomas.
I don't have any data to support that we're seeing any softening on those markets. I mean, those are the more affordable markets, so those are trying to get in, or those that are looking at their second or even third homes. It's an affordable, more affordable place. Nothing's affordable anymore, but it's definitely a good option as long as petrol doesn't go crazy again. Because the problem when you live out in the counties is that you got to drive a lot more to do what you need to do.
Good take. Good
And
take.
we've been talking about the gas prices for a long time impacting the other side of the mountain. Again, I did Waynesboro and Augusta, 21-22 year-to-date, single-family detached new construction, 22% up on Waynesboro, 20% on Augusta. Waynesboro went from 200 to 245, same block year over year. Augusta went from 275 to 317. I did quick math in my head, it's roughly 20%
Right.
on that, plus or minus a few percentage points on that end of it. To that point, though, Jerry, Nelson County is way down.
Down 50% year over year in sales volume,
And-
roughly. Think about that, boys and girls.
That had to happen though, because they went completely
Crazy.
bonkers during COVID.
And they went completely bonkers in part because of the second home purchases where people trying to get out of urban environments to places like Wintergreen or
Yep.
Nelson. To Woody's point, perhaps not the best barometer of down, because that was, you're basically saying an anomaly market because it was a second home market in a lot of ways.
Right. Yeah, a lot of the work we did in there were for folks that were doing the vacation rental thing and use it as a second home.
So to put some numbers to that, now, as Jerry quoted the 50%, but in 20, the median days on average in 20 was 69. In Albemarle County, it was 14. Right?
That's
So-
the jurisdiction, Nelson, that I'm most nervous about with their schools.
You know what the second one is? Well, not schools, but as far as market goes, is Buckingham. And as I tried to explain this to a client today, this morning on the way in, think about the market the last couple of years as rubber band that kind of grew out from the center equally. Now what's happening, it's kind of more pear-shaped, right? It's more around Charlottesville, Savannah, Green, and looping up towards the other side of the mountain. It's shaped more like a prayer. If you're outside of that, and you bought this, and if you bought 2 years ago, if you bought in 20 in Nelson County, you did pretty well. But I think you're going to see Nelson County's price go backwards. I think that's going to be the
It
only
has to.
jurisdiction.
I mean, look at
No doubt.
You've got folks
It's
that,
gonna-
that
but
have
in a
gotten
huge
to,
way, though.
to the short-term rental market, and they think they're going to make a fortune on that. And right now they're doing okay with it. But I mean,
He's talking Airbnbs.
yes.
Yeah.
Sorry for the acronym. But I mean, in the end, I mean, they're finding out how difficult it is because when you're doing that, you're not just renting a property, you're running a mini hotel.
Yes.
It's a business, right?
Yes.
So there's expenses that you probably weren't budgeting correctly. I mean, you have a 30 to 40% expense ratio on those types of properties if you're doing them correctly. And, you know, that's discretionary money that's working for the folks that are renting those things. So if the market tightens up to a degree where folks don't want to spend that money, that's going to be the first place where the foreclosures start happening.
I 100% agree with that. He's saying if the market tightens up and disposable income doesn't go as far as it once did, people are not going to travel as much and use Airbnbs. So the people that have the second homes that are trying to do Airbnb models are the ones that are going to be up the you-know-what creek.
Well, and I feel
Is that
like-
what you're saying?
And you're going to see a conglomeration. That's exactly what I'm saying. But you're going to see investment funds and REITs and things like that getting in and going, okay, thank you for trying this, Mr. I want to be a landlord and business owner here. We're going to take them in. So you're going to see huge portfolios of investment property. There's several funds now that are buying these properties.
Woody Fitcham is crushing it today. Nikki Chambliss, jump in.
Well, I feel like what I heard you say too was that people are getting into this not having that business minded and the long long-term business plan, which I think is probably the case with many business owners in any type,
Sure.
whether it's brick and mortar or Airbnb. And if they did, there really is money to be made, but you have to be strategic. You have to have a plan. You have to not only have your business plan for this year, but the next. Are they marketing? Because honestly, 151, that'd be a great staycation sell. Like, or, oh my gosh, motorcyclists, right? You can hit any road in any direction, have beautiful riding. But people aren't doing that.
80% of small
They
businesses
should be
fail in
marketing
their
to
first
me.
3 years.
Because I'm here for motorcycle staycation.
Well, I liken it to, my first degree is in culinary arts, so I spent some time in the restaurant business. And I would liken that to the story that's so common in that business. Someone throws really good parties, and they go, well, I could be a restaurateur. And they get in it, and that's one of the hardest businesses to get into.
Dude,
Oh, boy, is
seriously.
that. Yes.
Very well
low
said.
rate of success.
The agent Barbara Bozick watching. You got a lot of realtors watching today's show, boys and girls. Barbara Bozick, the solution, no matter the market, do an inspection, even if it's just for the purpose of canceling a contract. Realtors are not inspectors, and sellers many times do not know if there's something wrong with the house. Do an inspection, she says, even if it's just for the purpose of canceling the contract.
You know what? And she's 100% right. And let me add to that. And know that your inspection cannot see what will happen tomorrow or the day after, and plan for things to go wrong, please. You will make your life so much easier.
Buckingham County went backwards. Sold last 60 days, single family detached. List price was 207. Sales price was 187.
Okay, we're starting to see it.
It's a 20 grand upside down back to that portion, that rubber band.
That's the outer
Home.
county question.
Yeah.
That was
That's exactly
Well,
referenced.
right.
but they're
The viewers and
beyond
listeners
outer.
know.
So
Yeah.
Buckingham, though, is that next level outer, right? So when we're looking at Southern Albemarle.
That's more of a tertiary
Yeah,
market.
but-
it
Part
really
of
is,
Buckingham is not
because
even in the
it's-
car footprint.
Correct.
But if you go back and scale through Real Talk with Keith Smith, and Jerry and I talked about Buckingham
Yeah.
in the middle of the craziness
Yeah.
of that, and how this was becoming the new spot. But right now, their solds are down 20%.
There's a tremendous amount of timberland
20,000
changing
excuse
hands
me.
in Buckingham right now.
But I just wanted to quickly look at that because that
Nice.
at the moment, everything we looked at as we've been talking about, that's the only one that's went
They're
backwards.
outside the commuting corridor, though. That's why they're kind of like a tertiary market. So
Correct.
if you're going to see a weak market, that's probably where you're going to see
Correct.
it.
Yeah.
Brittany Gray, another realtor asking questions. Realtors, bring the questions. We love them. We love them. Ask the panel, start with Woody. They like you because you shoot it straight. Seriously.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's
You're
why I
having
come.
fun here, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's so fun. Ask the panel, what percentage of realtors will leave the profession in the next 2 to 3 years?
Same with appraisers. I mean, it's a tough business. I mean, and honestly, if I was going to hire a realtor, obviously I'm going to hire Keith.
No,
because
hire
I
you,
know.
no, hire you.
But I mean,
definitely hire you.
in the end, I'm not going to hire someone who's just got in the business in the last 18, 24 months because they've not made it through this transitioning market before. We want somebody with some background in that because it's a whole different world now.
And you have to have the skills to communicate with the client. It's interesting. We listened to this in Roanoke, Nikki and I. And if you really want to know how the real estate market's doing, watch the trends of realtors coming in and going out, right?
Part of that trend is in particular with the car membership is quite,
Robust.
I was going to say aging, baby boomer-ish.
57
Beyond.
years.
Yeah.
Silent generation, too.
Yeah. I mean, that is also contributing to the folks leaving the industry. They're retiring.
I mean, I'm still quite younger than the average age, and I just turned 43.
Yeah.
But the last 2 to 3 years, I can't remember the exact percentage, and Nikki, you might remember it from our presentation that was given. Most of them were millennials that came in, younger. So you're 100% right.
We do have more than ever before,
The
which is great.
the last couple of years, there's more newer agents coming in. It's a flip side, right?
Yes.
You know, they haven't been through this. So I counsel young agents, tie on to somebody that's got a little bit of gray hair on their thing and
well,
help
but
them.
let me speak to what you mentioned though, because I think one of the key things when you're looking, all new agents are not created equally, nor are all agents
That's
who have
true.
20 plus years in. There are agents who have 20 plus years in that if I put them side by side today with
The
a
newer
newer
agent's
agent
better, yeah.
who has had solid training, who makes sure they know their stuff. And that's the thing. What are they tied to? What is their backing? What
Thanks
are
for
they?
keeping me straight.
Yeah. No, I knew you would be okay with that. I don't know you
Woody.
well, but
Bring this
because
guy back.
You work with us day in and day out.
Yeah.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, I mean, in a lot of ways, he holds the ecosystem accountable.
He does.
This is the barometer. This
Yeah,
is the
we're-
barometer.
When I'm we're my appraisal institute classes, we're the fulcrum
man.
upon which the
Yeah.
transaction swings. That's how I voice it to my students.
And I meant you, not only you specifically, but the appraiser in general.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you, so during the pandemic, when I was still working with buyers and sellers, and I was working in those outer areas quite often, kind of worked everywhere within that car footprint, finding an appraiser who would say yes to a property not off the beaten path, just like Scottsville. I mean, that was not easy because you guys were so overwhelmed with so much business. I was just like, I don't know how they're still doing it and staying in business.
What gets me is even local lenders are doing this, and I'm not going to name any names to protect the innocent here, but, we did a review of an appraisal in Buckingham County, just over the line, in Scottsville still.
Yeah.
Someone came from Alexandria. They charged half of what our normal rate is to do the.
Tell me how that's supposed to work.
Well, that report was one of the worst reports I've ever
There you go.
reviewed.
So I tell this story all the time. My daughter helped a daughter buy a house up in Norwalk, Connecticut. I'll leave the specifics out of it. They ended up using somebody that traveled an hour and a half to get there. They were $50,000 under after the tiers happened. We ended up moving to a different lender, got a local appraiser, and they were $50,000 over. So this was 4 years ago. Well, hold it. This was just before the pandemic. It was a $100,000 delta between the two.
Yeah.
How does that happen? How can one from one appraiser to the other, and maybe this is a rhetorical question.
Especially when the comps are so data centric and you can find them online.
So real estate's local. I mean, that's the first and foremost rule that we all learn. It's location, location, location. If you're working the entire state of Virginia or half of it, there's no way you can know the nuances of each individual market. Our firm does work a very large area. I mean, we go with Loudon, but that's when we're doing mansion level and estate level properties. Very small market as far as volume and things like that. But it comes down to education. And my appraiser colleagues who are watching this, I will apologize because
You got a few.
you're probably not the person that I'm talking about here, but there are appraisers that are just like real estate agents or anyone else. They're just not very good at what they do. And it's not because they're intentionally bad professionals. They just don't know what they don't know. And they took correspondence courses to get in. They didn't go to real good education providers. When licensing came into effect, I think in 91 or 92 for appraisers, you're talking about 2 box tops and a check to get your license. And a lot of
From
those
a cracker
folks,
jack box, right?
yeah, right. So, I mean, you're talking folks that never really had any substantial education at all, and the only ones that you could really find that were worth their money were people who were designated, like SRAs and MAIs and things like that. I mean, I have my SRA designation. It took me 2 years to earn that
I was
credential.
going to say, so because you guys actually have quite the path you have to go through,
Yeah.
unlike realtors.
Yeah,
Truly.
getting your license now is way harder than it was even 10 years ago.
Not on our side of
Nope,
the
not on,
equation.
and not
Yeah.
on ours.
Not
Yeah.
on our side.
Your
of the
side, it's easier.
I literally
Oh my
just
gosh,
had this.
it's easier than getting a cosmetology license
Yeah.
as well.
I
We're just gonna
literally
throw
just
things
had this
out.
conversation with Yvonne, our youngest daughter, who's going to be moving back into Virginia, and she's going to get her license because we're going to open up some satellite offices with her on that end of it. But a little shout out for Wednesday's show. For Wednesday, I've got Brendan Harrop coming and Emily Funk, and we're going to talk about the value of photography and staging.
Nice.
And the reason I brought it up because we had this conversation. I'm digging into National Association statistics. I'm looking at it live. As of today, 95% of all buyers use what Jerry has holding in his hand
Oh, yeah.
and the internet. And I think the other 5% probably are not alive. So
Paul McCartron, we'll close with this. We'll close with the topic that is on every single page. Is the balloon hissing? So give us the take on this. It's on every single page here for the viewers and listeners. But before we do, Paul McCarter of Avenue says this: sometimes older agents operate on old information and generalizations. Hearing some of the more experienced, in air quotes, agents talk about the surrounding counties can be absolute crazy talk.
It could be. I mean, sometimes with appraisers, when I'm talking to them, it's like I'm always trying to get them to take more education and don't just take the cheap stuff. Go challenge yourself.
Yes.
But you can be 30 years in the business and only have 30 years of 1 year's worth of experience. And if you're not continually evolving yourself, are you really a professional? I mean,
Your
that's
boy Brian Hausler
Yes.
is giving you props in Townsend, Delaware,
awesome.
watching the program.
Brian played, he was our captain of our soccer team my freshman year.
He's
in high
giving you
school.
some props right now. All right, close on this topic here. Nikki Chambliss, you want to
What are
go
we talking
first?
about? Oh, that.
Dude, it's
I mean,
all
all
over the
the
feed
things,
here.
right?
Is the balloon hissing. It's all over the
Right.
feeds.
Buckingham County would indicate that maybe there's a little bit of a hiss going on, but again, until we get into, I'm sorry if I'm stepping on you.
No, keep talking, please. I was not.
I just, until you start seeing individual buyers or sellers rather, having some economic issue where they have to sell and they don't have any equity in their property, that's when the real hissing will start. I don't think we're there.
I'm gonna let you talk first.
So the answer is yes. We've been talking about that for a while. There's not
You said
gonna
the
be-
balloon is hissing.
Absolutely, right. It's not going to pop, though, so there's a difference between popping and hissing, and I'm using the rubber band as an example instead of a balloon. Of course it is, but it's this balance going on. Volume is going to drop, right? Year over year, volume is going to drop. But unless you're in Buckingham County, which we've just proved the numbers are going the other direction, on that end of it,
Nelson County.
but the numbers aren't going the other direction in Nelson County. Nelson County numbers are going up.
You're
on
talking price point,
that price point. I'm
not sales volume.
So that's the point I'm trying to get at. So normally what happens, it's two-sided. It happens simultaneously, right? Units go down, price goes down, right? What's happening is this weird thing that nobody's really ever seen before. If anybody's ever said they've seen this market before, they haven't, right? So what's happening is the volume is going down, but the prices are still going up unless you are in a hyper, what did we call that the other day? A hyper local market, a hyper micro market on that end of it. So it is, of course it is. Certain areas like Buckingham, we just looked at, it's not hissing, it's coming out pretty rapidly. Everything else is just letting a little bit of air, you know. Instead of pumping my bike tires to 110, I'm pumping them to 100, right? So it's still doing that.
Yeah, I
Nikki.
can't do that with my bike. If I under the inflate, that's a dangerous ride. So, okay, so where does the balloon reference come from? Is it just the idea of deflating and inflating?
I think the reference is to a pop.
Okay,
Isn't that the
see,
reference?
so like a bubble. So we're going back
Yeah.
to the whole, because we're not like 2008 through 12, right? So there's not a bubble that's going to burst. To me, it feels more like, if you've ever been rafting, you got a tube, right? And I feel like you could have your tube deflate a little bit and you're still riding okay, you're riding along the James, let's just say, or Ravenna or something, right? And then there's a point where it deflates enough where you're like, oh crap, this doesn't work anymore, right? And I feel like, sure, we're deflating a little, but we're still riding along the James.
So the thing we have to track is what I think we kind of all talked about here, right? Take a look at what list price versus sell price is going, and I'm going to keep a close track on this in future shows. When it starts getting closer and closer and closer and then starts going the other direction, then, you know, that balloon is just getting smaller and smaller. But
Well, the balloon was overinflated.
that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yes.
So maybe this wasn't a bad thing, right? Maybe if it kept on inflating, it would have popped, right? Letting it out. But look, we've got bus problems, we've got school problems, we've got interest rates that I think is going to be close to 7 to 8% by the end of the year. You know, the market is going to be very different today, I think, in December.
Well, I mean, it's real estate, right? It's an ever-changing market, especially in the last couple of years. It's been really extra, let's just call it that for now. And it's coming down from that. This is an ever-changing thing. We're always having to adjust. If you've been a homeowner for any amount of time and you've paid attention, which you may or may not have, right? If you've been in your home and you had no intention of moving, maybe you didn't care. But if you've been paying attention, what you're seeing is that it is ever-changing. And sometimes your value is much higher than others. And what you've got is a piece of property where you now have equity, regardless of when you bought, ideally. If it was 5 or more years ago, honestly, if it was even a smaller amount, but let's just say 5 or more years ago. And that is not always the case. I know that right now we're talking about the idea of people not having equity in their homes needing to move. That's also not an abnormal concept. When I first got into real estate about 6 years ago, Spring Creek was one of the neighborhoods that I was working in. And the challenge with that neighborhood was a lot of people bought in that neighborhood at the top price, and they could not sell without having to take a hit. So this is not an abnormal conversation for real estate.
That
This
was a hard
happens.
market to value at that point in time.
I bet it was, absolutely. It was challenging, and I loved working in it because it was challenging.
So I just looked at the clock, and Jerry,
Yeah, we
Judah,
are we done? Sorry.
we've
definitely-
got to wrap up. So as everybody's listening,
Yeah.
this is a recurring panel that's going to be coming on
Yeah.
at least once a month, if not more than that. So please tune in.
Brittany Gray says, I'm in Spring Creek right now. It's the same problem all over again.
Oh, man.
And she says, I'm noticing foreclosures mostly from rental market that got slammed during the pandemic, which seems like it's deflating the investor market. Not so much yet the homeowners losing their primary homes due to layoffs like in 2008. The show is archived in totality on realtalkwithkeithsmith.com. This dude is a rock star, Woody Fincham. I mean, you kill it in this setting.
Thank you.
Nikki Chambliss always kills it. She rode her motorcycle here. She's a badass. Keith Smith, the distinguished gentleman. Judah Wickhauer. I'm Jerry Miller. The I Love Seville show is up in approximately 39 minutes. We will see you then. Take care. Bravo,
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Judah.
Awesome.
Thank you,
That was
Jerry.
Awesome. Yeah.
Oh, that was great. Thanks, guys.